Okay. Okay, I will call the Municipal Services meeting of November 2nd to order. I will call the roll. Susan,
Present.
Tim,
Here. Thanks, Mitch.
Marty's excused, and I am here. We have a quorum. I have two public comments. First is Donna Joyce, is it?
Jost.
Jost. You state your name and your address, and
Sure. Donna Jost. I am at 1103 West Conant, and I just had a couple of comments regarding the assessments, which I see are on the agenda for this evening. Just a couple of things. It is incredibly frustrating to be within a couple of weeks of completion of this project and still have no idea what we will be assessed, how much we will be assessed. We know that the assessment tentative rolls that came out in June to this committee, in the packet with this committee, had one amount on it. We knew that in the notes from this committee that would be that was based on the construction estimates. So of course that we knew would go up. When I look at the information that is in the packet for this evening, mine has gone up almost $1,200. And I still don't know what exactly will be coming. We are a month out from the tax rolls being put out. If people were going to plan to attempt to pay this in one payment, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We don't know what it'll be. We don't know what the interest rate will be if we're going to try and extend it. There's no way for us to plan. And that is just incredibly anxiety causing and stress causing as I talk with other neighbors. And I know that there's a lot of discussion about, and I know it's gone back and forth from following all the minutes, I know it's gone back and forth between this committee and the council and back to this committee and to the, whatever the legislative one full committee title is, that it's gone back and forth. And I understand that there is a process. I do understand that. I'm just here to reiterate that this process is seriously impacting those of us who are trying to figure out how we are going to afford this to begin with and have no idea what that's going to look like.
It's flawed.
And that is, like I said, especially, you know, if all else fails, my request would be, can we at least consider putting this on the, and I'm gonna put it out there, although I suspect I know what the answer is. Can it be considered to be put on the 24 tax roll? Could it be considered to have the, at least the interest waived for some period of time? So that there was time for, if 24 won't work, you know, could that be considered? So, I just,
Have they already decided?
I don't
No?
know. Officially, no.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
and
can
then-
I
Where'd you
clarify?
get the $1,200?
no,
That's in the packet for tonight.
Okay.
That's in the packet for tonight. It was on the
your comments
website.
can come under the discussion.
Okay.
And
should
I
know
also just wanted to, with that, to just say, I know that this is not as easy as those of us on the outside may think that it should be, but I also want to make sure that people are aware the impact that this is having on that neighborhood, and that the going back and forth. And because I only know that we're going back and forth because I've asked questions and because I spent a lot of hours trying to go through a number of meetings worth of minutes to try and figure out where is it now, where is it now, where is it now. That's not something that many of the residents are going to be able to do or have been able able to do.
4:30.
So,
What time?
Can you ask
Your
questions?
time.
I'm out of time.
How much
So-
time do I get? I thought I get 30 minutes.
3 minutes. So
I think
next,
that changed to 5, didn't it?
That's just for the council.
So
she's got 2 minutes left.
No, that was 5.
well, that was 5 minutes, okay.
Am I gonna jump?
No, it is
Five minutes.
It's 5, right?
Yep.
You're calling somebody else first.
So next we have Mark Belmore.
So, I think you'll all agree that the
So if you wanna
system.
state your address?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mark Belmore, 929 West Conant Street, Portage. But I think you guys all have, and the young lady, have to agree that this whole process and procedure is flawed. It is absolutely flawed. We should have known before the first tractor arrived, had somewhat of an idea of where we were gonna be impacted. I mean, I don't see how you could disagree with that. And I would ask that the council somewhere in the future correct that. Because otherwise you can have irate citizens and you're gonna get voted out if they're irate enough. And we don't wanna see that. I'm not gonna beat a dead horse over the head other than to say, voice my philosophy. We are paying, apparently, again, I don't know, I haven't seen anything in writing, I don't know where you all stand with it. But if you assess us for the entire amount, or even a portion of it, I feel, that we are paying for assessments on property, we are paying for improvements on property we don't own. We don't own the curb, we don't own the apron, we don't own the berm, we own none of that. And yet we're paying for the improvement on that, and now we're gonna pay another time. Because now once the tax rolls come out and we're assessed an improvement on that property in the year or 2 or 3 in coming years, we're gonna get taxed again on it, and that's inherently unfair. I mean, I don't know how you can look at that and say that that's a great way of doing it. Do I have an answer for the other way of doing it? No, but I think we could together come up with something, and maybe at the same time help with the procedure and the process that has been dropped. We should have had somewhat of an idea when this all started, before they drove the first tractor up on that road. We should have had somewhat of an idea. Now, you're gonna say to me, we got those first preliminary sheets, but I was told those were no good and those should not have gone out. Well, why were they printed? They were printed at a city council meeting. So my question there would be again, that's what we had to work with. That's all you've given us to work with, which I think again is unfair, totally unfair. Can I ask questions?
No, well, we can't answer it,
Yeah.
Why, Dennis?
because that's our policy.
Under public comment.
Under public comment, you
Now,
can't
when they
answer.
talk about it, then.
When we come down to it, I think, when we come down to it, I think.
Okay. All right, that's all I have to say, unless you can think of something else I should say, Dennis.
Okay, moving on.
I didn't see one.
Approval of meeting minutes from October 5th, 2023 meeting. Tim,
I'll approve the minutes from October 5th, 2023 meeting.
I'll second it.
got a motion by Tim, second by Susan. Any corrections or discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Tim?
Aye.
I vote aye. Susan?
Aye.
Motion carried. 4, discussion possible recommendation on resolution number 23-23, intent to exercise special assessment powers for the West Conant Street reconstruction project. Phil?
Yes. So as we are aware, this resolution was first brought to the committee back in July of this year. Subsequently, no action was taken. It went to the council and then has now been kind of kicked back to the committee. This resolution indicates items that would be special assessed for, which include sidewalks, driveway aprons, and sanitary laterals. This resolution was kind of written off of previously assessed projects in the past dating back to 2015, so that's in line with similar projects in nature. The resolution also indicates payment method should we move forward with these special assessments, which outlines individuals being assessed less than $300 shall pay in full within 60 days of being invoiced. More than $300 but less than $1,500 have the option of paying the balance in full or placing on their tax roll to be paid in 3 annual installments plus interest. and more than $1,500 have the option of paying in full or placing on the tax roll to be paid within 5 annual installments plus interest. Also included in the packet is the preliminary assessment roll, which now includes the bid value of the project, so what the contractor bid those unit prices at, as well as the associated value per each individual property. And that value is based off of the planned quantity. So if we had to take an extra stone or we left a stone in, that is not reflected in this preliminary assessment roll. The goal tonight is to determine what the committee wishes to assess for. Again, outlined, these are only in line with projects dating back to 2015. This could include more or less per the special assessment powers granted to us by the state statute. It all depends on your recommendation. Following recommendation of what to assess, the resolution and assessment roll would be updated and brought to council for action next week. And then per state statute, we would then be required to file an engineering report which outlines the proposed assessments along with the preliminary assessment roll, as well as the final set of plans to be kept on file by the city clerk. We would then hold a public hearing where all assessed properties would be notified via letter that we have moved forward with that intention to special assess, followed by a final resolution once those final values are determined based on field quantities as well as those pay items.
Michael,
I just wanted to, there was a couple of questions that were asked, I just want to be able to answer.
I'm sorry, say that again, Mike?
There are just some questions that were asked during public comment that I wanted to be able to respond to.
Thank you.
As far as as Donna had asked about the tax rolls, this project could never have been assessed for this year's taxes, and it won't be. In fact, it will be for 24.
We get to stew on it for the whole 12.
Well, it'll be for 24 payable and 25, and I'll get to why that is in a second. The process, I could not possibly more agree with the process, and it's been very difficult. I mean, Phil and I are constantly referencing this handy manual. It's so convoluted, and it's completely set forth in state statutes of what you must do. It requires that a preliminary assessment, and it specifies that we have to show 100% of the possible costs, even if this council doesn't intend to assess at 100% in the notice. So I can understand why that's very confusing, and it would be ideal to figure that out before it's laid out, but that is what is required. And I don't like it, I'm just gonna say, that is what is laid forth. Then comes to an intent to use its special assessment powers, which is where we're at tonight. So that preliminary notice that's in the packet of rolls, that has to show 100% of the value. Now it'll be here for discussion, then a recommendation of what should be assessed, at what amount or at all. That recommendation will go to the council. And then after the council, they can modify it even further. Then after that, a public hearing notice, and this is what is really strange to me about this process through statute. So the public hearing notice comes after the council decides what it intends to do.
So the council can turn your guys' decision all on its head, correct?
It always can with any committee recommendation,
Anything.
but specific to the public.
Is that normal? Do they normally do that then?
do they
Does
normally
our-
don't,
Okay,
they normally go with the committee.
yeah, okay.
So-
Is 99% of the time,
Spec-
but they have the authority
Sure.
to override the committee.
That's specific to the public hearing portion, so what will happen, presumably? Committee recommendation, council, they'll act. Now, by state statutes 66.0721, now a public hearing has to be held. No shorter than 10 days, no longer than 40 days after the council talks about it.
Yeah, that's after the notice is published.
Right, so to even make, so then there's gonna be a public hearing, but there won't be any further action. that doesn't make, the public hearing should come first, but that is not what it says to do. And then final
So that
is,
just gets the constituents riled up even more.
agreed, but we have to follow it.
Yeah, I understand.
And then the very final step is the final assessment roll, correct?
Correct.
That doesn't usually happen until the project is completely done, all the accounting's been done, all the checks have been paid, to look to see exactly what has been paid and the exactness to the penny of each assessment, and that comes sometimes months later. So,
So is there a reason that the city has not explained that process in writing to the residents?
I don't know the back history. I mean, this has been a lot for me to come up to speed with as well. I
Why don't
don't.
you come on, Mike?
May.
Maybe, yeah, that's what I thought.
Phil and I are constantly referencing this because we often second guess ourselves. We're like, well, what does the manual say? And unfortunately, there isn't a flow chart. It's just a lot of writing. So I think we can definitely do a better job of saying, which condenses down to say how this process is going to work. However, it's still going to be very, very inflexible and counterintuitive simply because we have to follow the state statute on it.
Yes, and for all of us sitting out there wondering what's happening, any information that says, look, this is what we're bound by in the state statute, here's the state statute.
I think that, I think at the committee level, and I mean, I think that bad information was put out.
I
I
don't think it was.
think
I disagree with
incomplete
that.
information, I think, given the fact that the public hearing happens as a rubber stamp for a process that in fact the public had no ability to participate in, had bad information not come out at all, there would have been no engagement in this process.
Absolutely.
And that would have been worse.
And the misinformation that was put out looks like it was underestimated.
Which I'm not surprised, because that was an estimate based
And we
on
knew that.
contractor
We knew
estimates,
there was
but
The public hearing has to happen no shorter than 10 days and no longer than 40 days after. That is state statute.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
But we're powerless to do anything about it.
Right.
That's what you're telling us.
As a resident,
The
yep,
city is.
So we have to place our faith in you people.
and we
and
don't know
hope-
what is
and hope-
happening.
And hope that you don't want to get your ox gored at some point in the future. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. I understand that. I do. I'm not arguing with you guys. The process is, there's something flawed with it. And I cannot believe it could not be streamlined in some form or fashion where you gave us notice with it, and then you said, well, that really wasn't notice. But in looking at things, it really was, and it wasn't too far off with what's actually out there. And that's all we ask, is to have notice, not in August where we got it. We should have that in January, February. We should have that before the first road grader comes out there to do any
Even
work.
if it's
We
not
should
the
have-
dollar amounts to
I
explain
think
what
that's-
this
don't you
process
think?
is.
Don't you think that would be the process?
In my opinion, on this whole process for this street, we were trying to do it a couple months ago,
Yeah.
but that got kicked out of our hands by somebody else that wanted to change rules, and so we never made it,
That is correct.
we never did it.
Well, you
Did our
guys are in a
our
tough
job
position,
here on
right?
that one.
You're in a tough position, I mean, I know that.
So
So,
it got kicked out of our hands and then back to our hands now.
Yeah.
That's why we're talking about it tonight instead of
Sure.
2 months ago.
Yeah, Okay.
and,
So-
and
Well, we understand, I'm just saying for future use, I'm sure you guys realize too, that it would be better, you'd be better fit to have process
I would
streamlined where
rather,
this.
I would rather had this discussion 2 months ago.
right.
Or,
Well,
you know,
6 months ago.
6 months ago, I wasn't here 6
Before they
months ago,
said
but
that. No, in all
Well,
fairness,
in all honesty, we've known for 3 years we're gonna do this road, so.
well,
that's true, so there should have been a process,
So,
and that's what,
The
that's
city
all we're
has-
asking, is
The
just
city has
fix
dropped
that.
the ball on
One-
this since
one-
day one.
once again, I'll reference the fact that state statute says that you have to do an engineering estimate before any numbers can be put out. And the engineering estimate does not come in a whole lot sooner before
So
bid.
these numbers might be light too.
No, the numbers that you see in tonight's packet,
Okay,
the unit price
okay,
is what the contractor has bid for those items.
okay.
Now, the quantity that is being placed may differ, because the quantity is based on the plans.
I see.
And what has actually been put in the ground.
So if there's a stone that they didn't have to replace,
I understand.
the plan didn't show that, so then your assessment could be lower. Or if there was something that they didn't think they needed to replace on the plan and now they had to, the assessment could go higher. But
So how
But
much
the-
was this entire project, Dennis, do you know? Or Phil?
Phil would be the one to answer.
About 1.9 million.
1.9, okay. In order for the city to absorb that, that's a big,
To absorb
Yes.
all the assessment
that's a
costs,
big, that's a big ask.
that's a big number.
That's a big ask.
That's a big number for where we are in the city right now.
That's, I'm curious,
Yeah.
is that,
You,
okay?
you know, it's not only that, Mark. We gotta be a little bit cognizant, is we have never, ever, to the best of my knowledge, that we have given some concessions on special assessments on any roads that we did.
No one's ever raised the fact that that's a property that we're improving, that we don't own,
No,
and then getting taxed later on it also?
no,
So that just
I
boggles my
question the
mind.
fact is, how much you get taxed for them improvements.
Well, you wouldn't get, I mean, they are in the city right away, so you would not be taxed directly for any of those.
You know that, and when you say curb and gutter, you don't get assessed for that either.
That's not it.
You
No,
don't
but the
have,
sidewalk is,
Your
we don't own
sidewalk,
the sidewalk, we don't own the apron,
yeah,
we don't own any of that.
that's right.
And we're getting
I mean,
assessed
that's
for it.
been a contention for 1,000 years, is
thought you'd fix
I have
that
to
by
maintain
now.
the sidewalk, but it's not mine, city can do with whatever they want. I mean, that's how the system works.
So,
You know, so I don't, you know, is it fair for us to look at Corner Street and say, we're not gonna special assessment Corner Street, what are we gonna do next year? Or the year after? And what about the people last year and the year before?
There should be a policy, that's,
You know,
that's all part of the
we've
process
had-
that should have been done in January.
Because I can tell you, every street that we did, when we're gonna redo the sidewalks, it's an issue. You know, I mean, that we have, at the public hearing, we have people, you know, they don't want it, or, I mean, everybody's got a reason why, you know, I've always said, everybody wants sidewalk, they just don't want it on their house, in front of their house.
That should have been tackled on
You know,
past projects.
so there's, you know, the problem that we have at this point in time, cause I agree with this, but this has been a unique situation, Corn Street. You know, number one is that we've had somewhat of a change order on municipal services. Now, that ain't your fault, but that created problems. At one point in time, we thought it was an ordinance, so it had to go back to leg and reg. Found out that it's really not an ordinance, it's just it's our assessment power of municipal services. So that kind of delayed it a month, you know, so the whole thing it has taken a different twist that we've never had before on a project, you know.
and I think
And there's been no formal communication with the residents as to why, what the delays are, what the process is.
Yeah, there's some big numbers out there for some of these.
And I think the messiness is actually not necessarily a bad thing. It's because there's been a pretty robust debate of how we do this.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reason for the messiness, because the current policy, like Dennis had said, has been followed pretty much verbatim, which is
Verbatim.
100% of sidewalk, 100% of alley. The only reason that it did get messy is because there's thoughts that, is this the right thing to do at all? So, I mean, that is, and, you know, and
Which is, we appreciate that there's at least discussion. on
And,
that,
you know,
right?
it's just, there's a lot of new people, there's a lot of new thoughts, and, so, I mean, yes, it is not good for the residents and that it
What-
has been this way, but I think the reason that it became messy is not bad.
What have you learned from this process that you'll change on,
Somebody else's road. East
Yeah.
Slifer.
yeah, what have you learned that will change, possibly change and make changes? Or what you had to have thought about that. Mike, let's start,
I
Mike.
think we're kind of tied with some of the state statute. We can't put those numbers out until we have accurate numbers.
You can't, so the numbers we got in August should not have been put out at all?
Oh, no, we have to put them out.
No,
No, wait, no,
Them
which
are
is
our
it?
engineering
Which is
estimates.
it? Which is it? He says no, you say you have to.
So
So again, that whole thing, that alone tells me we need some communication in this whole process.
Well, they were our engineering estimates.
correct,
they were engineering estimates.
And
but
we
not
have-
the bid estimates,
No, correct.
which is
Correct.
what they should go
Yeah.
out, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
so,
Yeah,
right, but we should have had those in January, February, March, if we knew the project was coming, I would think.
Well, we never put it out for bid, so we would have no way to grasp
Correct.
the number.
yeah.
I mean, because if.
But
we
that
had-
wasn't a bid, that wasn't a bid price, it was an engineering price.
But we didn't
Came
even
from
have an
engineering.
engineering price at that point, so we
Not
couldn't
until
have put it
August.
out.
But
So,
why so late for that? That's my whole point. Why so late for that?
well, cause
That's
if you
what I'm
have to
getting at,
go
if
through
you're
the
gonna change.
process, you gotta go through the process with the state to get approval, which is a whole
Yeah,
process.
And the other thing that happened on this project, which is unique to this project that we don't have, is we had another step of approval because we had the DNR involved.
Right.
And we normally, on a street reconstruction, we don't have the DNR involved. And we don't, they don't move at it, they move at a snail's pace down there, you know, we have no control of that. So that's made this project unique, you know. There's a lot of things that have been unique to this project. You know, one of the things, like the mayor said, this has been on the docket for 3 years. And then we canceled it, and I will tell anybody that wants to listen to me that that was the smartest thing that we did. Now, it backfired on us. That didn't, but the fact of the matter is, if we could have saved you people $1 million, do you not think that was the right thing to do?
What you would have
Again,
done.
it is what it is, you know,
Yeah, well, there was no way to know that at the
there was no
time.
way to know that, so I believe that that was the smart thing to do, to be,
I'm not disagreeing with that.
to be, for our taxpayers, it didn't plan out for us. And so that was just the start of another delay, you know, on this whole thing. You know, we've gone back and forth at council level, actually, but to go back to your comment about that, there hasn't been enough correspondence per se with the city and the residents. I don't know that I agree with that at all in this project, because I will tell you that we have had more meetings in the council chambers, whether it be municipal services or whatnot, where the people of Conant Street have had an opportunity to come and talk, than I've ever been involved in any meeting in 8 years. That, you know, that they have cut, that it's been on the agenda, and we've allowed the people
And I've
to,
been there.
to communicate. So to say that we haven't had communication with you, now maybe you didn't get an official notice from City Hall that we were gonna have that meeting, but the fact of the matter is, Conant Street turned out. You know, however you got that information, we've had, and that is more than we've ever had on any project in the city that I've been involved in.
That's because our alderman,
That's right, for whatever reason it happened,
Right.
but the fact of the matter is, there's been communication.
yeah.
You know, regardless of how you got it.
There has, but we feel
You
a
know,
little late.
Now,
but
it
again,
isn't that maybe communication and maybe the outcome isn't the way you wanted it, but there's been communication about how
There's
this is.
been opportunity for public comment.
That's correct.
That is correct.
you
Where
know.
we've all spoken and had no, because it's the policy, so there's been no response during public comment. Many of those meetings, questions were not answered when it came up on the agenda. Questions that were raised in public comment were not addressed when the topic came up on the agenda. So we were still left with questions. I got some of those questions answered because I stayed till the bitter end and just started asking questions after the meeting. But that's not communication. That's not communication with the residents. That's a resident being absolutely obnoxiously inserting herself into the process to try and get her own questions answered.
What we're gonna do with these special assessments.
Yes.
And just rereading it, you know, going back to exactly what you said about, you know, when you get noticed, and it specifies it in the opposite of what is logical.
But it's like you say, there's none of this is gonna be due in 2023.
And that
It's
is a
gonna be due in
huge
twenty
relief,
twenty-four.
but I
Or
only know that
2025.
because I'm here tonight. My neighbors don't know that.
Well, they
Mark
will
knows
when they
that.
get their final bill, because it'll state that on that.
Well, they'll
Well-
know it because we'll start talking and
Well,
say,
yeah.
hey,
Well-
don't panic for
So-
right now.
Traditionally, one of the problems with meetings and committees like this are no different than school board meetings. The public doesn't go. And then when the decision's made, they complain about what the decision was, when they had ample opportunity. And I'm as guilty of that as anyone, for crying out loud. I admit it. It's human nature.
I've said that all along.
So-
Corner Street has been very active in this project. I can tell you that when we do Slifer Street, if we have the same issues on Slifer Street as we've had on Corner Street, there won't be one person. And then it's a small group and things go.
There are two things that, I guess, one, I certainly can make a document to at least let people understand how this process works in a non-legal statutorial.
Right, without the legalese.
Right, I mean, that can certainly be accomplished, and I could do that for the next time there's special assessments. That is totally reasonable and should have happened. Second thing is, I guess I'll argue a little bit with you, Donna, about you've not been obnoxious. You've done exactly what a citizen is supposed to do. And
Thank you.
and I think I've relayed that several times. I mean, you advocating on behalf of yourself and your neighbors is exactly what is supposed to happen. So, you're not obnoxious.
So, we need to
Okay,
move
I know
on.
that you need to move on. I do appreciate that. Thank you.
We need to move on here, what we're gonna do with assessments. If we're gonna leave them at the way we've assessed every other project in the city, that's an option. Not assessing anybody is an option. I don't know if that's necessarily a good option, but that is an option, that, you know, we can take that to the council. Or, you know, somehow, you know, I mean, and to give everybody an idea what I can remember of how we've talked about it at the council level, is there's been talk about if you have an alley and a sidewalk, you only get assessed for one, you don't get assessed for both of them. That's out there, you know, that's been on the table. At this point in time, an alley assessment is 50% of the cost to redo the alley. Another option is with sidewalks and alleys. If you have a sidewalk now, you don't get a special assessment, okay? Then the cost is borne by the city. However, if you have a 4-foot sidewalk and you're gonna get a 5-foot sidewalk, you only do not get assessed for the 4 feet. You would still have to pay for the extra foot because you've never had a 5-foot sidewalk.
Which is part of the 892 ADA requirements.
Yeah, okay, because when we replace all of our sidewalks, I think by ordinance have to be 5 feet.
Correct.
By ordinance, so,
ADA.
so that is an option out there. I think that for Conant Street, I believe that everybody on Conant Street except the end lot has sidewalk now. It's only, I think the majority of it is 4 feet. So you're gonna get a new 5-foot sidewalk. You would only be assessed a foot, but that's the way we do it now anyway. You aren't getting assessed for the whole 5 feet anyway. You know, you're only getting assessed
Are
for
they
the
only
foot.
putting a patch in?
No, I think they take the whole sidewalk.
Whole thing's out.
And put a
Take
whole
the
new
whole
5
square.
foot, but 4 feet of it is borne by the city.
That gets, for accessibility, I think.
I don't know
you-
what the ADA, I know
Yeah,
what that's
yeah.
for.
But
Yeah.
the sidewalk, if that's an option to do that, the sidewalk goes with the property, not the property owner. Meaning that you sell your house and it's got a sidewalk in front of it, well, then when we go and we put new sidewalk in, you don't have to pay for it because you bought the sidewalk and you bought the house. You know, it isn't necessarily that the person has really physically paid for the sidewalk, but it goes with, if the property has the sidewalk, then you don't pay for that. If the sidewalk needs to be, you know, this is more than just Conant Street. You know, because we go through the city once a year and we repair sidewalk, you know, in different spots that got bad stones and whatnot. Again, that would be then borne by the city. You know, I can tell you that I talked to Jennifer, so I was coming up steps. At this point in time, we're $120,000 over budget yet. That's gotta be done by next Thursday night, or Tuesday night. No, next Thursday night, whatever. When we change all of these, that only costs the city more money. Where do we get that money? You know, just to keep that in mind, you know.
Has anyone ever thought, Dennis, or the committee, about some type of assessment for the entire city, such as we have the wheel tax that we pay now? Someone explain to me where and how that accumulates. Is there any amount there that accumulates? And if something could be done the same way on each piece of property?
So what you just said is exactly right. And hence the reason the state allows this. And you know, it's really interesting because we have a guy named Steve Sobiek who actually worked for Governor Thompson when this happened and was in the room, levy limits. The state allows us to increase the total dollar amount of our budget every year only by the net new construction in the city. For this year, that was $43,000 when healthcare went up $150,000. So I guess as an alternative, they said, well, you can special assess your residents instead.
Well, I'm wondering if that's an option. I mean, a $100 assessment would be agreeable, I think, to most people, rather than a 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9.
Well, I guess my point is that the ideal mechanism is taxes. It's amortized across the entire tax base at value.
Absolutely, but now the whole city benefits from that when they need a project done, and there's none of this.
But
Well, I'll give you the argument that we're gonna get. What about all the people that paid for the sidewalk already, and now we're gonna start assessing them for your sidewalk?
Well, at some
Yeah,
point in
let's-
time, their sidewalk's gonna need fixing.
Exactly.
Absolutely. At some point
I'm
in
just saying,
time.
that's the argument you're gonna get.
Yeah, you're gonna get that no matter what. At some point,
Well,
someone has to swallow
Not
and say,
not like
now's the
wheel
time.
tax. Wheel tax, because
that's,
wheel tax was out there for us to do additional work.
I
That was
use
it.
that as
It
an
wasn't
example.
that it was going to take assessment away from somebody.
You could call road assessment, you could call it whatever you
No.
wanna call it, other than wheel assessment.
The,
That would make more sense than coming in, and all of a sudden, in a matter of
I
60
think-
days, saying you gotta pay $4 or $5 or $6 or $7 or $8 or $9,000. Hello?
I think it's valid points. It's valid points other than, for another meeting, of how we're gonna do this.
Well, that's
Well,
what
we
I'm
have to-
saying. I know it isn't gonna be now. Dennis.
can't-
I know that, but I'm talking
We
about.
can't act fast enough to say we're gonna special assess the whole
I
city
I
for the
understand
sidewalks
that.
on Conant Street. You know, I
I'm going
mean,
I'm going
it's-
right back to my initial comments when I said, is there a system that should have been addressed in January, February, March? Is there a better way of doing what we have just gone through? And I have to believe that there absolutely is.
Well, and I was listening to your comments before on that, and Phil's, the same thing, it's time.
Yes.
In January, February, they don't have the numbers. They didn't have the numbers until August. So, you know,
Well,
you
my first question
can't
is
get
why?
those numbers in January, February.
Why can't you?
Because in January, February, we
Because
don't even
when
know,
we
we're not
wanna
even
bid
doing,
for
we don't
bids.
even know we're doing that road yet.
When
we
we
want the
went out for
engineering
bid.
project.
Well, this wasn't a bid, this was engineering, it had nothing to do with the bid.
Well, I mean, the argument to that is I could certainly put an engineer's estimate together for a project that we're going to do a year from now. That number may not be worth the paper that it's printed on because
Well, but that's what
the
you told
market
us
is
the initial one
constantly
was.
changing.
You told us that that was the initial one, that wasn't the worth the paper that it was written on either, that first one we got out. I was told that that should have never been put out.
Correct.
Okay,
The,
so
the number
there's-
that you are seeing tonight is based on the bid price. That is what we are going to be charged per square foot for
You
every.
could have come close to that, Phil, with an engineering bid.
No, I
haven't.
couldn't.
Concrete went up $3 a square foot, how would?
Because you
Overestimate-
saw-
How would
Overestimate,
Phil ever be able to
overestimate,
guess that?
You saw the
Overestimate?
engineer estimate.
overestimate, and if it's lower, you've won.
But
You're-
so-
You're friends with everybody.
But then everybody thinks it's higher than what it is, and that was exactly what happened this year. Is as soon as the preliminary, Phil had finished that, the last one, what was it, a couple of days later, we got the bid back for the sidewalk project, and unbeknownst to us, and that was an engineering estimate, concrete went up 30%. So as soon as that went out, was being distributed, my first thought was, it's gonna be higher, and now they're gonna think we lied to them. Because we had to publish it with the engineering estimates. And I knew that was gonna happen.
Yeah, but if you explain that to people, they've gotta understand.
Well, and I think that's,
I'm just trying to help you guys in the future of devising a way to not have this happen, what we've just gone through on Conant Street, and that would be a way of doing it.
and I think we can certainly do, I don't even know what the right word, at least like a top sheet saying, so this is how this works. And, referencing state law, so, people understand that this is, it's rigid in the way that it is not ideal.
Yeah, but you know what you come back to there, Michael? You come back to the residents saying, yeah, right, now we're gonna blame it on the state.
Well,
Yes,
I'm
you ask the
100%
state-
blaming it on
You
the
ask the state blames it on the county blames it on the city, and which shell is the nut, which shell is the nut under? That's what the public.
I'm on
finance
record
is.
to say that it is 100% the fault of the state legislature.
Yeah, no doubt.
And I don't doubt that, but again,
They're
if you
that
ask
way.
them,
Yep.
what I'm saying is if you ask someone with that organization or that institution, they'll say, oh, no, it's the individual county. If you ask the county say, no, it's the
I don't
city.
think that they will, because.
They will turn it into a circle. Where's the nut?
They printed the book,
Well,
they're
and-
not gonna back away from it.
So,
Shell is the nut.
on the question you specifically asked about assessing for sidewalks as whole, that is also restricted under state law. You can only assess directly for the property in which it abuts.
You can't just have an assessment for improvements?
No, only specific tied to the property in which the improvement abuts.
I didn't mean to hold you up. Dennis, continue with.
I think they're good questions, it's just,
Yeah,
So, we need to make a decision on what we're gonna do with the special assessments on Conant Street. That's what's on the agenda, that's what we have to decide tonight.
My personal opinion on it, looking at the way the city is right now with our budgeting and how, in the future, we're gonna have growth in the future. And in the future, we can sure look at it again, once we have that growth and have that money. But right now, the city doesn't have the money. We're gonna have to assess something. I mean, we're just gonna keep pushing ourselves further and further in debt and eventually bankrupt the city if we get away from assessments completely.
Go ahead, Michael.
so I guess, there's one item on this list that is a little different than the others. I can only speak for the 3 municipalities that I've worked for in the past. It was specific to sewer laterals. Sewer laterals are are owned from the main to the house. Where water service is owned from the curb stop to
The house,
the house.
Correct.
correct.
Our special assessment policy, so, the state lists all the things you could assess for. I mean, it could technically assess for the street, but that's never been a palatable option. But as far as the sewer lateral, I just note that, this being the third place, it is common to assess for sewer laterals. However, I will note that that doesn't have anything to do with levy limits, because it's part of the sewer debt, and the sewer does not have a levy. The only other time I've seen it not be assessed for laterals is when it was part of a grant, because that would become punitive at that point. As far as the driveway aprons, my personal opinion on this is that the city raised the street substantially, and for a good reason, because it would alleviate stormwater. I do not believe that the city should be assessing for aprons in this project. Sidewalk one is, I guess, up for interpretation. You know, at the very least, I would hope that it would mirror, the alley, but also I am quite taken by your analysis, or your idea as well. And to get back to the point, you know, it is city property. And then the last thing, I feel like it's totally unnecessary to be charging interest.
Well, I don't know that I would agree with that.
Right?
We have to borrow the money.
Right, but we don't have to assess either. And talking with Jennifer before, the interest, it is a nightmare for staff to go through and figure out what the current interest rate is on a note that is amortized over a period of time, and then it's a very small amount of money compared to the assessments themselves. And it actually is more work than I think it's worth.
Well, but you're still gonna have to amortize it, because you're gonna have to amortize the principal amount. So all you're doing is that, couple of your comments. I have worked in my lifetime in a lot of municipalities on sewer laterals, okay? I don't know of a municipality that I have ever worked in that the sewer isn't yours all the way to the main. Water is yours from the curb stop to the house, but the sewer is yours from every municipality I have ever worked in. The sewers is yours all the way to the main. How they ever started that, I don't know, but that is the way it is. As far as what I don't agree with is, if we take out a bond issue for Conant Street, I think that's a 20-year bond issue, is what we took out for that. I see no reason that we wouldn't give the residents at least 15 years to pay it, other than Jennifer ain't gonna like that, because that's that much longer she has to keep track to all that. But, you know, we take out a 20-year bond issue because we can't afford to pay for it up front. But then we look at the residents and say, we don't care if you can afford it or not. You gotta pay for it up front, or 3 years. I believe if they want, now they're gonna have to pay the interest, and we charge the same interest rate that we borrowed, that our bond rating is for. I believe I'm right.
Right now, it's
And that bond issue for Conant Street in particular is relatively low compared to today's rate. I don't remember what we borrowed that for.
the interest rate and the policy is the contemporary plus 1%.
Yeah, okay, plus 1% for that. I said that once before and somebody contradicted me and said, no, it's for the same rate. I always thought it was for 1% over what we borrowed it for.
Yeah, it's 1%.
But anyway, I believe that they should be given, I don't care if they only owe $300. You know, for some people, paying $300 would be no different than me paying $3,000. You know, I don't think it's fair for us to judge the residents' financial picture. That they should be able to take whatever we take, they should. Now, it might be that we cut a couple of years off of it, so we don't have it lingering on once the bond issue is over with, but I believe, because if that property gets sold, that's on there, then the assessment has to be paid in full. Once your property is sold, in the closing, the city will get a check for that. So that's something that I tried to get that through about 5 years ago, and we revised it to this system we got now. I didn't agree with it at the time, and I still don't agree with it.
Well, and so this is the time to talk about it, because whatever this committee does tonight and the council does is what will be brought back to the council too.
That's right.
I,
So,
I have no problem with extending it out.
and I do
That part I
agree
don't- I don't
with
know.
Michael. If there's a reason that all these aprons had to get changed because of the benefit of the city, like raising that street, yeah, I agree with Michael that they shouldn't have to pay for for their aprons and their driveways.
I just had 2 aprons put on 10 months ago.
Yeah, so I'm in agreement with that, Michael, you know, because that's something that we're really not setting a precedent. You know, if the next project, if we don't raise the street, they're gonna have to pay for their aprons, but there's a reason we raise the street for the betterment of the city. So I believe that that's a legitimate expense for the city to pay for these aprons.
And,
So,
I think we're pretty, I disagree on the length of time, because that comes into a huge administrative.
I know.
And what I fear what would happen is that we can assess more because the annual payments are lower.
Isn't there a program they can buy to put that into that?
Yeah, I don't know, it's, again, I'll go back to my reasoning behind that. I agree, it's more work for city, there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. Jennifer's gonna hate me for this
What
if
if
this
we-
just goes through, but the fact of the matter is, we go out and borrow the money for 20 years because we can't afford to pay for it up front. But we're looking at the residents, whether it's Conant Street, Prospect Street, Slifer Street, whatever street it is, and saying, we don't really care what your financial picture is, here's how you're gonna pay for it to the city. And I don't think that's fair to the residents. That's my reasoning behind that. Yes, it's more work for the city, but the fact of the matter is, they still are our, to some degree, they're our bosses, you know,
What if we extended it out, but didn't have, you know, they could have the extension, but maybe made it a smaller, like a 1% interest instead of an amortized interest, or no interest?
It can be zero.
Could be zero.
Yeah, we can,
But I don't think you can extend it out, I think it's gonna have to go to legislative first, because it's policy.
Well, the.
is it policy or is it ordinance?
It's, the resolution is, so initially, I think, so you can see that the city really grappled with this when they first did this. Because then it came back with a subsequent resolution that said, if it's over this, then it's over this amount of time. Right? And then if you had a financial harm or a disadvantage, whatever, don't have as much money as other people, it would get extended even further. So,
There's a hardship in there, so
Right.
that somebody could file a hardship and say, I can't pay this.
But only up
They
to
can-
5 years.
They can extend it.
I think 5 years is max,
Correct.
Per our current policy.
per our current policy.
Okay.
you know, but here's the thing.
And it has to be over a certain amount. It can't be $500 and then you want to pay
Anything
for
over
it.
$1,500.
What often happens with geo obligation notes is they get refinanced to extend the term to another 20 years later. That's where that gets really messy. So if we took out money now at a 20-year note, refinance 5 years from now, we may extend it to 20 years again.
Yeah, I think that we can solve that though by what the initial note was, what our initial bond was. What we do with that bond down the road, that's our choice. Even though, you know, we come into, God forbid, a whole bunch of money, we decide to pay the bond off.
Well, and that does happen. I mean, we don't usually
Yeah.
come into a bunch of money, but sometimes when rates though, just say, hey, we're gonna pay this off right now.
Yeah.
Tracking that's difficult. I would firmly recommend that we stick with a set number of years and not what is a contemporaneous bond. It really is difficult.
Yeah, and I think if we go past what the current policy is at 5 years, it's gonna just delay this whole process even longer, because then it's gonna have to go to a different committee and everything else in order to change the policy.
Correct.
Well, we'd have to agree on it for this one and then change the policy in the future for how we're gonna.
I personally think
How
we're
we're gonna
making a
do that.
mistake agreeing to something for Conant Street that we don't have any intent of agreeing to next year and year after and year after and year after. That, you know, we should have a reason why we're making concessions rather than just making a concession.
No.
Yeah, like the concession for, we raised the street 6 inches,
That's-
so they shouldn't have to pay for the.
That's right.
Agree with it 100%.
That's a legitimate concession.
Yeah, because most of those people on that street would have not needed to replace their aprons.
That's correct. So I'm all for that. Making other concessions that we really are gonna talk about to see if we're gonna do in the future.
Well, if we can't change the term of how long they pay, we can't do that today.
Well, we can change the term of how we pay, but the mayor is saying we can't in this meeting tonight change it.
Yeah.
But we have all the authority in the world
Well, yeah.
to change how it's gonna get paid. It just has to go through committees. Now, as far as that goes,
And that would still
again,
affect them
this isn't gonna,
once they-
nobody's gonna have to pay for anything until 2024.
Yeah.
And actually, it would go on, you'd be paying for it in 2025, it'll go on the 2024 tax roll. So, in the event that we did wanna change it, there is time to change that.
We could,
Because we have, we have a year to, I'll just kind of work with that, because I doubt that we'll send out the final assessments in December, I assume, November or December, to the people on Cortlandt Street.
I would probably argue that's probably gonna be after that even.
Oh, okay.
For the final
So, I doubt that there's anybody gonna run in here with a check to pay us, when they know that they don't have to pay us until the tax roll. That would be my,
The numbers as they are
My
now
guess,
are
that-
probably pretty close.
yeah.
Correct.
Well, they're gonna
It's
change
tough-
if we
tough to say,
take
though.
the aprons out. They'll change.
No, I mean, just like the final assessment versus the big
There's a
quantity.
few minor inconsistencies, a couple squares that had to come out additionally, a couple that were kept. But you're right, in theory, a majority of those quantities are, spot on.
Yeah, and I won't
Not all of them.
go through the whole thing we did at the council meeting, my, opinions on special assessments. But I'm just gonna reiterate, sewer laterals, it is common, and I haven't seen it otherwise, of not assessing sewer laterals.
and you said.
Driveway aprons, I would say no. Sidewalk, at the absolute most would be to at least mirror the alley policy.
About 15%.
But when I say absolute most, I'm saying that for a reason.
So you're saying that the 1 foot that they gotta pay for, because most of them have 4-foot sidewalks over there, correct, Phil?
There's a large portion.
Okay, so the 1 foot, they would only be assessed for half of that 1 foot?
That would be because that's what the policy says. The percentages are one thing, but it's specified that if you have a 4 foot, you only pay for the extra foot.
That is
Make it
correct.
5 feet, but you have 5 feet, you have to pay for the full 5 feet. And this goes back to requiring cities to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act, which says you have to have 5 feet sections of sidewalk.
So if you have a 5-foot sidewalk in front of your property, and we replace it, you have to pay for the whole 5 feet.
Correct.
Yes?
But if you have a 4 foot and we replace,
Correct.
well, yeah, that's gotta change.
Because we're just making it,
That's,
we're just
that's,
making it to compliance.
I don't disagree.
yeah, that's
The sewer laterals,
wrong.
you were saying something
You'd be
about-
better off before you start, just go out and take a saw and saw a foot off your sidewalk.
You said something about those going on to
I mean, that's,
Sewer debt.
that's just
Don't
stupid.
give
that-
people that idea.
so to pay that.
Good for Phil got
The
there.
sewer bills.
And you know, and you would have chopped.
But there's
off.
not a levy limit. So, like what Mark said earlier, isn't there a way to make this fairly across the city? Yes, there is, it's taxes. But the state has said you can only raise it this amount, so, we're gonna give you this other mechanism to make people unhappy, but it won't be our fault.
Yeah,
So if we do the sewer laterals on the sewer debt, then that's gonna tax everybody in the state, or everybody in the city.
But it would be reflected in sewer rates and,
Yeah.
whatever capacity that would come out to.
with what I just learned, I'm supporting that if they have a sidewalk, they only buy a sidewalk
Sewer
once.
rates are gonna go up a lot.
They only buy a sidewalk once. A 5-foot sidewalk. So if you have a 4 foot, you have to buy a foot. Okay?
Okay.
But if you have a 5 foot and we tear it out, that's gonna be the city's responsibility
Okay.
and not the homeowners.
I don't agree with that. But in the city's
Well, keep in,
financial state that we're in right now, in a few years, once this development start building and we start getting more tax
Wow.
rolls in,
Keep-
then yes, maybe.
keep in mind how
go
we
to
do it
that.
now, Tim, just to be clear. If you have a 4-foot sidewalk and we tear it out.
I
for a
understand,
5 foot,
I understand what
But
you're
if
saying.
you have a 5 foot, then you gotta
You
pay for the whole thing. That's just not being fair.
But before, if you had a 4-foot sidewalk and we tore it out, you paid for the 4-foot sidewalk. But
No,
Yeah.
you only paid for 1 foot.
Right.
That's
No,
always
no.
been the case.
No, before they put the addition 5-foot in,
No matter whether it's a
When-
4 foot or a
when we
5
had
foot, the
4-foot
resident
sidewalk.
still doesn't own that
It's been
sidewalk.
5 foot
The
since
city
I've been
owns
in
the
all.
sidewalk.
I don't remember us ever putting in 4
Either
foot.
way, the city.
4-foot sidewalks are old,
well, yeah, that'd be years ago. But
years
they-
ago.
They paid for the.
But that could have
4-foot
been,
sidewalk,
it could have been. We've been 5 foot since I've been involved,
Yeah.
you know. So, that, but,
I'm just
but for
looking,
Conant Street,
I'm just
for the
looking at
purposes
the-
of Conant Street,
I have no problems with going to not paying for sidewalks or paying for
So what you,
curbs or any of that stuff. What I'm looking at here right now is the city's financial stability we're in right now. We're looking at cutting $120,000 budget, which could possibly be
truth of the matter is,
personnel or whatever it is.
this
But,
doesn't,
It doesn't really.
It doesn't
it
affect.
doesn't
the
affect the
operating
budget.
Doesn't affect.
no, it doesn't affect the budget, but it affects future spending.
budget. It affects the overall indebtedness.
Yeah.
To the city because
In the
our
future,
levy
we're-
limits aren't affected.
If we
By
stop,
loan payments.
if we stop assessing on everything, there's, not
Well,
too long from here,
so-
we're not gonna be able to borrow anything to fix anything.
Well, that's a whole nother discussion. I feel like we've hamstrung ourselves unnecessarily. But regardless of what your policy says, it still is not binding until the committee decides what to do.
Well, yeah.
Every time. So when there's special circumstances, so if X developer runs over our curb and sidewalk, you bet we're going after him for 100%.
Yep.
This has nothing to do with the future.
That's correct.
I mean, in those specific cases, you would never give up your special assessment powers. That would be a massive
No,
mistake.
that'd be,
And that's-
it'd be dumb to do.
Yeah.
But if you do it for one, going
Oh,
forward,
yeah.
you're gonna have to do it for everybody.
Well, you should.
Otherwise,
You
when
don't-
you come to my street and you say, we're gonna do Carroll, and I'm gonna assess you 100% for the road, the sidewalks, everything, I'm gonna be like, well, you didn't assess them?
Well,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
I mean-
but the way you explained it, Tim, was 3 years from now, when we have a whole bunch of money, or we have more money,
We
now
can
we're
relook-
gonna change our
we can
policy
relook
back
at it
then.
again.
What makes
Oh.
that more fair than doing it now?
Keep in mind, when we're talking about special assessments, theoretically, we're talking about aprons
Yeah.
and sidewalk and sewer laterals. Them are the only thing we
Well,
assess.
yeah, and
All the street work,
Street
all
work,
the
I
curb
know
and
that.
gutter, all of
I
that,
just threw street in
there
there.
is no assessments for that whatsoever. The city has always paid 100%.
There can be though.
They're good.
But there could be, but.
Is all that part of this budget?
Pardon me?
Is all that part of this budget? All, what's just done is all of what you just spent, that $2 million?
Yes.
Is that part
That's
of
all
this
part of that.
budget?
That's all part of it. So theoretically, that's what we're talking about. Just about any street project we
Yeah.
do, sidewalks, aprons, if you will, and sewer laterals. That's, now, what people get a little confused with is then they take that sewer lateral because their lateral going in their house is 100 years old, or and they tend to think, well, that's gonna cost me 3,000, so that's part of my project, which it's not, because we can stop at the property line, and we can stop with the water on the property line. You don't have to have a new water lateral, going into your house.
They're not as part of this.
No, but I'm just saying overall, in.
There were no water laterals put in on this project, Phil?
There are water laterals from the main to
the
the
property
property
line.
line.
To the line?
But that's not borne, that's borne by
Yours
the
is
city, not borne by the
Ours-
taxpayer.
ours
Yours is
actually the
different,
one-
correct.
Yeah, it's
So
different.
for whatever
No,
reason,
nothing on your water
Yeah.
lateral.
and there's
was
a
replaced.
series
That's
of
what explained to
case
me.
law and all this, that sewer laterals from the floor drain in your house to the main are the property owners, even though it's in the city street.
Yeah.
Not, I don't know where that comes from.
I have no idea.
I bet you it's really old wherever.
I've been a plumber for 50 years. I dug up a lot of streets. And that is the way it is. And it don't matter what community you get in, that is the way it is. It goes to the center of the street.
Yep.
I'll be very honest with you, there's a new house going up on Silver Lake Drive, and they gotta have a lateral put in, and it goes to the middle of the street. The city
Well,
doesn't.
they don't close
Put
for
new
2 days.
laterals
Huh?
into the
The
house?
road's been closed
Yeah.
for 2 days.
They don't put laterals into the house?
No,
No,
no.
it's
The
all-
city? No.
I was thinking they were putting laterals into all the houses.
No.
All new ones.
They stub it to the property line and cap it, right? Usually.
Yeah.
If there's not
So-
a house there.
For new construction typically, yes.
Yeah, so anyway, so we have to determine, going back to what we're gonna do with special assessments on Conant Street. That's what's on the agenda, and that's what we have to determine tonight.
Like type by type.
What do you think, Sue?
What do I think? This is getting kind of
Just so
long,
we can
but,
decide.
Sure. Yeah.
I feel, you know, the taxes for the people are high, you know, and I like to see the city help with some of that, but then the city is in kind of quite a budget. I sat through the budget meeting, and that is not fun at all. So I know that what the city is in, some problems.
Well, I can tell you, the more the city pays, the lesser amount they assess, the more the taxes will go up.
True, it's a one-to-one direct ratio.
Yeah,
But,
you know,
you
now
know,
that, I don't mean that the
Right,
resident should have to start paying
right.
for everything and plus pay taxes. But if you're concerned with the taxes being high, so then that's a reason to not assess. They're only gonna get higher.
yeah, ideally it
It's
would
a
be.
double-edged sword.
It would be that the local government has local control and determines its annual budget based off the citizens voting for them without irresponsible restrictions from the state.
State of Wisconsin, that's right.
Right, so when this comes up, you can say, hey, we're not special assessing anything, you're gonna see a little high taxes, a little higher for it, but you never have to worry about it. That would be ideal. But it's not what
I
happens.
disagree with what you said about Thompson. I believe this all started with Jim Doyle, not with Tommy Thompson.
Steve Sobiek would argue that.
Yeah, he was in the room.
They were temporary in 1992.
Yeah.
In
Maybe
2023.
Doyle,
They further extended them in
maybe
2006.
that's what it was.
Yeah.
So for the recommendation, do we want to take the 3 items that we have item by item and determine how we want to move forward with them?
I think that'd be easiest.
So,
Or do we want to add any items that currently have not been assessed dating back to 2015? Do you want to assess for the road?
no,
Do you want to assess for curb and gutter?
no.
I can see the sewer laterals going to the sewer, what you were talking about before, or is that where it goes now? It doesn't
It's
get-
common. I mean, it's,
Oh, it doesn't get assessed to the,
no, it does.
It does.
oh, okay.
And that's common.
I don't know a place that doesn't do it that way unless a grant is involved.
So, and with Conant Street, for just Conant Street, the majority of the people there have 4-foot sidewalks.
I mean, a large portion, but not everybody.
And the ones that don't have a 4-foot sidewalk, did they get new sidewalk?
The
If they,
ones that don't have, so the people that have 5-foot sidewalk, yes, in some cases have gotten new segments of 5-foot sidewalk.
so them people, the way it stands right now, them people will have to pay for a new 5-foot sidewalk.
Correct.
But the people that have a 4-foot sidewalk on that same street, they're only gonna pay for 1 foot.
Per our current policy, yes.
That makes no sense.
So we were on laterals.
Unless they've already
Yeah.
paid.
Okay, let's do sewer laterals first. Let's get rid of sewer laterals. I'm gonna make a motion that the
And that the
property,
motion would come all in one. So,
well, it doesn't have to.
sure, alright.
We can make it all in one.
Yeah.
Right. If we all
Okay.
agree,
You can
but
verbally maybe agree on it.
Okay,
I could have
do you
3
agree
different
with sewer
resolutions,
laterals?
Doesn't matter to me, but it's just more.
yeah, I can see sewer laterals going that way.
Go to the homeowner.
Or is it to the homeowner you want them?
That's the way it is, that's the
Oh,
way the policy is.
I
That's
know
the
he
way
was-
every policy in the city of, in the state, as far as I'm concerned, is. And that is what you're suggesting, that they stay,
Say that way?
I'm just saying it would be very abnormal not to do it that way.
that is correct.
Don't construe that with my opinion.
I didn't know which
So
way.
you're
you were
saying that the people pay for the sewer from the road to the house?
From the main to the house.
The main.
No, to the
main.
property
Main.
line. It doesn't have to go to the house, it only goes to the house if they prefer it to go to the house, but then it is their expense. The city has nothing to do with the property line to the house.
Correct, the sewer laterals though it's a sewer connection.
Correct.
So in some cases, we had to go 5 feet into the existing lateral. In in some cases, we had to go primarily to the property line is what it should be factored as.
Ideally.
Yep.
We're talking right now from the main to wherever that sewer connection happened.
Yes.
Do you agree that that should be borne by the property owner?
I guess it has been in the past,
It has.
so I probably,
I'd agree to stick with the.
Okay, and I agree
At
with
this
the sewer
time.
laterals. Okay, the aprons. Do you agree with the Conant Street project to, because we raised the street, the city should borne the cost of the new driveway aprons?
I don't know.
Well,
You
it's-
think they probably should?
It's gonna have
The
to.
city should bear the cost of the apron then,
Yeah, out of fairness.
Yeah.
out of fairness, okay?
It was to the benefit of the city that we raised the road,
Right.
and that's the reason they needed new aprons.
Yep.
Is that gonna mess up our budget?
No.
Yep.
Okay, go for it.
Tim?
So, I agree with it on this case. 'Cause
Okay.
We needed it raised.
So the last item is.
So
the
wait, where did we end on aprons then?
The
Not to
city's
assess
gonna
them.
borne the cost.
Not assessed.
So now we're at sidewalks.
What's our current policy on sidewalks for, I mean, not the 1 foot, 5 foot,
Well, that is our current
100%.
policy.
the 100%, 50%?
100%.
Current policy is if you have a 5-foot sidewalk and it needs replaced, you borne 100% of the cost. If you have a 4-foot sidewalk and needs to be replaced, you only have to pay for a foot.
100% of the foot.
100% of the foot.
Yeah.
So what is your position on that?
I could go with, my personal opinion would be 100% on the foot, and then probably 50% on, if you have to have a whole one replaced. Because that chunk has been, because that's what we do with sidewalks when we replace them in the city, right? That's the ones that we had before, we had the sidewalk assessments that we were gonna do, that was 50%, wasn't it?
That was 100%.
100%.
Oh, that was 100%.
It's alleys that are
100%.
50%.
I didn't realize ours, it read that way, that they were paying 100% if they had 5 foot and only 1 foot if they had 4 foot. I
It's
didn't-
100% to 4 or 5, just to put the 4, it's just 100% of the additional foot.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what the policy is.
Even if the whole 4 foot needed to be replaced.
Yeah.
that is correct.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That is correct.
It should have been the whole 5 foot.
Who wrote that, I don't know.
Susan?
So the 5-foot sidewalk, was it in really bad condition or was it in good condition?
5-foot sidewalk that's being replaced,
Yeah,
typically in bad condition.
then it needs to be replaced.
So-
Yes, I don't think
The-
anybody's
The
arguing
question
that.
is whether we should have replaced it or shouldn't. The question is who's gonna pay for it.
Right.
The land person, the landowner.
100%?
Yeah,
What did
if
she
it's
say?
in bad condition, yeah.
Pardon me?
The landowner.
Should pay
I'll
what
see.
percentage of it?
Okay, we're going about percentage?
Yes. So if I replace 1 square of sidewalk at 5 feet, so just 100% of the whole thing, does the landowner pay 25, 50, 75% of it, and the other percentage would be paid by the city, or does the city pay for 100% of the sidewalk? It's what percent of the total?
You said 50%? You stuck with
I
50%?
I was saying 50%. I don't agree with the 1 foot policy, it should have been the whole thing, but that was a different policy that was written, but.
Yeah.
I guess, I think that's owner should be 75%, I'm gonna say. Because, it needed replacing anyway.
We've already paid for it once.
And you already paid for, oh yeah, oh, that's right, we're not paying for it twice.
We've already paid for it once.
That's not the policy, it's just, that's what we're trying to figure out, what the policy is gonna be.
So if you have 4 feet and you go into 5, you only pay 25%. You get the whole sidewalk at 5 feet. But if you need a 5-foot replaced, you have to pay for the whole thing. That makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense.
I wasn't here for the writing of that policy.
So what do you wanna do?
What do you say?
Again, here we go with.
I say, my opinion is that
I think the whole policy should be.
the city should pay for the 5-foot sidewalk. The homeowner is, if they have a 5-foot sidewalk already and it needs replacing, the city should borne the cost. If they have a 4-foot sidewalk and we have to add 1 foot onto it, even though they're gonna get a whole new 5-foot, then the homeowner would borne 1 foot of that. But we would pay, one of two things that should happen. The homeowner pays all 5 feet, regardless if they got a 4-foot or not. Or the city pays 5 feet and 1 foot, or, and the 4-foot.
Right.
It should be consistent of what the homeowner's paying.
Can we change that in this now for how the 5-foot is done?
You bet, absolutely.
Because that's what I'm saying, is if,
We can change it.
that's what I'm saying, is if it's a 4-foot sidewalk going to a 5-foot sidewalk, it should be the whole 5 foot.
Should
Not
be borne
just-
by the city.
No, it should 50% by the homeowner, was what I was saying on the 4-foot, or the 5-foot getting replaced, I was saying 50% on that.
So regardless of if you have a 4-foot sidewalk currently or a
Or a
5-foot
5-foot
sidewalk.
sidewalk, if it gets replaced, you.
It should
You
be
pay 2.5
consistent
feet.
for both.
Yeah,
What I can tell you is, that is why we should have done this in separate motions. Because in the sidewalk, we're not gonna agree 100%. I agree on that, but I don't agree on the sidewalk issue.
And by all means, we can have, I mean, that would be 3 different resolutions.
Well, can we
Well,
spell it
not
out?
necessarily, we can vote on each issue, and then the majority, and that could be the one
Spell
resolution.
it out under,
Spell it out in the resolution.
yeah, spell it out in the resolution under,
It can still be just one resolution, Phil.
a schedule of the proposed assessments to be levied and broken down as the said assessments affect each parcel. I think under C, we could specify
Sure.
the things.
Okay, so,
There's no problem.
are we gonna we'll do this in separate motions.
Sure.
So first is, I'm gonna make a motion that the city borne the costs of all of the driveway aprons.
I'll second.
I got a motion and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, Tim,
Aye.
I'll vote aye, Susan,
I'll vote aye.
okay. Next is the sewer laterals, and I'll make a motion that the city take that back, that the property owner bornes all costs from the main to the property line for sewer laterals.
To the connection.
No expense to the city. I'll make that in full motion.
I'll second.
I got a motion and a second, any discussion? Oh, no, you didn't second that yet. Yeah, you
I
did,
did,
you
yeah,
second,
I
yeah.
did.
Got a motion and a second, any discussion?
No,
Hearing none, I will vote aye, Susan
aye.
and Tim.
Aye.
Next is the sidewalk. Tim?
I'll make a motion that all the sidewalks are assessed at the 5-foot, whether they're 1 foot or 4 foot, with 50% borne by the homeowner
On all sidewalks?
on all the sidewalks.
The 4-foot or the 5-foot?
4 foot or the 5 foot, that would be all assessed at 5 foot, instead of the 1 foot and and a 5 foot.
So is that gonna be like for the future too, for everybody in the future?
Every special assessment would come back to.
Come back to this committee.
What will happen though is whatever this committee does, I am going to write a new resolution
Yeah.
that incorporates all these,
Yeah.
for whatever it does, and then it can still not binding. Every year it can still say, I want 1%. But, you know, it's just the nature of the game.
So,
Okay, I'll second it.
got a motion by Tim, second by Susan. Any discussion? That is what is
Here's the
consistent.
discussion over there.
That is what is consistent with our alleys, doing it that way. So I guess I will support that.
I
Mayor,
just got a question, just for clarification, so, the policy now is if you have a 4-foot sidewalk, you only have to pay for the addition of 1 foot. What you're proposing is, you're gonna, whatever the homeowner is gonna pay for half of the sidewalk regardless of if they have 5 foot or 4 foot.
Yeah,
that is
because
what the motion is.
So now, all
instead
the
of doing
people
just 1
on,
foot, they're getting a whole new sidewalk.
so all the people on Cohen Street who have 4-foot sidewalks are now, gonna, instead of paying for 1 foot, are gonna pay for 2.5.
2.5.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is what the motion is.
At least it's consistent.
Yeah,
And
I didn't
that's the-
realize it
that's
was
the
the
problem
other
I
way.
had
How's
with
that
it,
gonna
is
affect
it was
the
1
budget?
foot or
How's it
the other
gonna
person
affect
pays
the
5
budget?
foot
The city
altogether.
It is,
Be
however,
responsible for
different than what the residents have been repeatedly told through this process.
That's
Just
my
to
problem.
clarify. And for
That
those
is
of
my
us who
problem.
have already, within the last 10 years, paid for the 4-foot sidewalk, we're being for that.
Do you know anybody that's done that? Because they would not have been allowed to put in a 4-foot sidewalk since
Correct.
1992.
They replaced my sidewalk.
And is yours a 4-foot?
You know what? I regret every day that I didn't go out with a tape measure and measure mine before we started this. I don't know, it's new now. It's hard to tell. The only ones that are not new are part of yours, your 2 neighbors,
Ours were 5 foot.
and
So anyway,
one other
yeah.
house.
but that is what the motion is, Mayor.
Well, it would be able to tell us on here which one, you know, 4 foot,
Well,
5
it's,
foot.
what's on there is blank.
Oh,
But
you have a
in
discussion.
response to you, Mayor,
Talk to you after the
Okay.
is I agree, and that is kind of a can of worms, because we've told one thing, but we've also told them that they're gonna pay for their driveway
Yes.
aprons, and now we're telling them they ain't gonna pay, that they don't have to pay for that. So I mean, it is kind of a, now I don't know what effect that has financial
Give and take.
from one to the other, it is kind of a give and take situation. So we not only changed per se for our benefit, we changed for their benefit also.
This is finally coming to the point where we're just making a recommendation of how to move forward in the future.
And all this is a recommendation to the council. This doesn't have this is, all we do is recommend this to the council. This has another kick at the cat.
You get to do this again.
So, with that said, I will call the roll. First is Susan.
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carried.
Are you doing right?
It's as clear as mud.
You think we're doing the right thing?
I am not in a
Okay.
position, you are.
Discussion on possible supplemental warning sign policy.
Yep, so I included a memo in the packet regarding supplemental warning signs. Over the past several years, there've been multiple requests for these types of signs, which would be a blind child area, deaf child area, autistic child area, children at play, etc. The city currently does not have a policy in place for those sign requests as they come in. And we would like to kind of come up to a solution on how to handle these moving forward as they continuously are brought to our attention. So part of my memo outlines that these types of signage are not actually are not a standard contained in the Wisconsin Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. They don't recognize them, because they are supplemental at that point. They're not enforcement signs, et cetera. So the purpose, the manual states that the purpose of a warning sign is to provide advance warning to the road user of unexpected conditions on or adjacent to the roadway that might not be readily apparent. However, signs that convey the message of blind child, deaf child, autistic child, or children at play are not recognized federally for this. So what we have done, and a big thank you to Admin Assistant Robin Fisher for this, we've gone through and have pulled a number of communities in the area and pulled them to determine if they have these sign policies in place or if they don't. We have found kind of a mixed bag of that. There's some communities that don't put these signs up because they're not enforceable, and they feel that they're not warranted, by the city to bear those costs. They consider them to be a false sense of security, and they feel that they might allow their users to rely on the sign and disregard normal safety procedures. Motorists sometimes ignore these signs, and as they do not indicate immediate danger, and the overuse of signs may reduce overall effectiveness of all signs throughout the city. Additionally, most neighborhoods have children present, and it would not be practicable to place the sign whenever requested. And motorists driving recklessly are unlikely to change their behavior due to a sign of this nature. These types of signs would also not be enforceable by the police department. It was also noted by one community that an agency's use for non-standard signs may imply that the involved jurisdiction approves streets as playgrounds. It invites the people that are affected by that signage to have that false sense of security that I can play in the street because people should know that I'm here. There are a number of communities that do install these types of signs. They typically have a policy in place that outlines the requirements and parameters for these signs to be installed. These requirements include signage request forms, which provides the information of the requester, as well as pertinent information related to the desired sign, such as age of child and diagnosed condition, sometimes even accompanied by a licensed physician note. There are also parameters in place for removal of said signage once that child has reached a certain age or the family has moved. So what we're looking for is guidance from the committee on how you would like to see these signs handled in the future. A policy would then be implemented and distributed to individuals making these requests. However, please note it would be staff's recommendation to avoid overuse of signs as they have potential to create more problems than they potentially would arise.
I know Bill and I have talked about this, I think at after the last meeting. I drive for a living, and he asked me how many times I see a yellow sign when I'm driving down the road. Unfortunately, I'm looking at house numbers or stop signs. I'm not really looking for yellow signs. I drive with caution because I know in town there's gonna be children, they do run out in front of you. That's just my personal driving habits, but I don't really look for yellow signs all the time, so I don't know if they're that effective.
So,
I agree with what you said, they're not, I think that they're there all the time, so you don't really know if they're even relevant anymore. My thoughts are don't pedestrians pretty much always have the right of way? I
They do.
think, we need a policeman here now, but anyway.
No, they do.
I think they pretty much have the right of way. So therefore, though children are usually taught by the parents, to, stay out of the street or whatever, watch for cars, you still have to drive carefully. You know what I like to see, I have seen on different, I don't know if I've ever seen it in Portage. those little, they're portable signs that a little child's holding a flag, you know, it's a plastic sign, you know.
They have them all,
Yeah, they have
they have them all over town.
Do they?
Those
Oh,
are
they do?
purchased and installed
better-
by the property owners.
Yeah, I know they're out by Lake Wisconsin for sure, I used to drive out there a lot, on Tipperary, and, and then I figure, oh, the parents must, the grandparents or whatever must have children there, but all of a sudden that weekend, the sign's sitting out there. So then I figure that's very relevant, you know, that there's children bouncing around. That's my thoughts. Get a little portable sign, because you know, that's relevant, because if
Those
it's out
actually-
there now.
Those actually catch the attention of a driver more than our yellow signs do.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, yeah.
I see those most of the time, but that's why I know they're all over town, because I see them, because they got the little flag hanging up.
Okay,
But
yes,
the yellow signs,
yeah.
I guess I agree with Tim, I mean, that, how effective are they? You know, I mean, they're maybe effective today, in a week from now, are they effective for that, you know, I mean, for the people, you know, especially in residential areas, you kinda got the same people driving in them same areas all the time.
you see it a couple times, and then it just
Yeah,
becomes
that's
blind.
right. You know, I wish we could do something for areas like taking Hamilton Street where the park is. When that park has got a lot of people in it, that also means there's a lot of cars on Hamilton Street parked there. And I look at, yes, pedestrians have the right of way at all times, but I look at a handicapped child just dodging out from one of them cars. And you can say they got the right of way, but I mean, if, you know, so, and I don't know that I wanna just say handicapped kids, I mean, you got any kid 3 years old, 4 years old can do exactly the same thing, you know? It's kind of a dangerous situation, you know, and I'm sure we have probably several places like that, you know, around the city. You know, we don't have, probably when you get to residential neighborhoods, that is as busy or whatnot as, you know, you have cars parked, there's no doubt, but you don't have them in a consolidated area like you do per se on Hamilton Street. You know, that, I know that the county actually, puts up a given amount of signs to slow down. You know, and they're put up by Roger, you know, please slow down and whatnot. I think they're somewhat effective, you know, you're gonna hate what I got to say. I think the most effective thing there is speed bumps. You
I'm
know,
gonna hate what you say.
I know, but,
That road could use them, when the park is.
I mean, I take, and I'm only, I'm only talking for myself here, is, that's an area, I mean, that's an area that will slow you down, and I'm a culprit, you know?
When that park is busy, does the city know beforehand, are there permits that have to be purchased when that park is normally that busy or not?
I mean, Hamilton Street?
Yeah, that
Well,
park there.
if they were gonna use our pavilion there, they would, but if they're gonna use the tennis courts, no.
There isn't.
And, you know, in the daytime, you know, especially during the summer and whatnot, you know, they turn them courts into pickleball courts, they're heavily used,
Are they?
they're heavily used.
I
You
was
know,
gonna say, if the city was notified and had a permit.
yeah, no,
then they could
I mean,
go put
for,
out the portable
if you
sign
were
that
having a
says-
graduation party there and using our pavilion, yes, we would have, we would know that ahead of time, but not, the rest of it, not for pickleball or playground equipment,
I
I mean,
can
anybody.
see
would do
around
it.
like the parks, having the flashing yellow
Yeah.
slow light. Just the regular residential, everybody should know that you know, there's gonna be kids in the road, there's gonna be people in the road. I mean, they should be on the sidewalk, but
I think those are two different things. You know, I think what is,
the sign request is what you guys are talking about.
right, we're talking about something that's very temporal, right? A blind child area, a deaf child, autistic child. I guess I'm gonna come back to, how is the city supposed to know if any of those children still reside in those places?
That's gonna be very, very, very difficult.
That would
for
have
us
to
to
come
do,
down to,
you
when
know.
they do the sign request, they're gonna have to renew it every year or every 2
Right.
years or something like that, and that's gonna take city time and
Well, and I mean, just
staff time.
spending, my immediate thought when I first saw this, used to work in schools. I think that you don't want to alert the public that there might be a child that is more susceptible.
Do we have did we get a request to put
You
up
mean
a
for
sign
safety?
someplace?
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
for
Oh,
safety
we've had
purposes.
numerous.
Oh, we have?
Yeah.
Susan?
How about sticking with more of those plastic signs?
Those plastic signs are
Portable
also
plastic
not
signs.
not a recognized sign as per the Wisconsin Manual on Uniform Traffic.
Yeah, but I recognize them.
Well, in private property.
So do you.
So,
Well, private property owners can buy them and put them on their property.
But I think
You
the
can
one
buy
about
it.
a permanent structure being there, that's a different story, right? But it just reeks of administrative problems. And like you said, there's no enforcement mechanism for this at all. I mean,
Oh.
if you violate, how could you write a ticket that you obeyed all the traffic
What does
laws?
staff recommend? That we do nothing?
That would be to avoid these types of signs altogether.
I guess I'll tend to agree with staff.
Yeah, I agree with that. Do we need to make a motion or anything, you guys just gonna write a policy?
The minutes would reflect.
Oh, okay.
Susan?
So where would one get one of those, like the portable signs, like those portable plastic
Amazon.
signs?
You can buy them at Walmart or something like
Staples.
that.
Walmart?
Staples online,
I
Amazon,
wonder
I'm
if the
sure
police
is on.
department would have it.
Well, a lot of them have them now.
There's another way we
Yeah.
could make some money.
So it generally, and I think Phil will back me up on this, the fewer signs, the better on a roadway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just for, you don't obey any signs if there are a lot of signs. And I think that's why speed limits are dictated by jurisdiction and speed change.
Correct.
Okay, moving on. Discussion on potential pedestrian crossing at East Albert Street and Adams Street intersection.
Yep, so it was requested at the previous meeting that to discuss a potential pedestrian crossing at the intersection of East Albert Street and Adams Street. This crossing would facilitate pedestrian traffic from the north side of East Albert Street, utilizing the businesses to the south side where parking is available at times. The crossing will require pavement marking indicating a crosswalk, as well as modifications on both sides of the road, which would include additional sidewalk and curb cuts as required by the Americans with Disability Act. In reviewing the crosswalk marking requirements outlined in section 3B.18 of the Wisconsin Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, crosswalks are not recommended to be installed at a location away from a traffic control signal or an approach controlled by a stop or yield sign. Additionally, the manual also states that crosswalks should be marked at all intersections on established routes to a school, which would not apply in this case, and vehicles approaching these intersections from opposing streets should follow the Uniform Vehicle Code, which outlines that a vehicle approaching an intersection must yield the right-of-way to any vehicle or pedestrian already in that intersection. Curb cuts and ADA ramps would need to be installed, obviously on both the north and south side of East Albert Street, as well as sidewalk installation with curb cuts and ADA ramps on the north side of the roadway. The north side of the roadway currently has no sidewalk, and these items are not currently associated with any current city budgets. So staff does not recommend the installation of a crosswalk at this location, as it is not recommended per the Wisconsin Manual on Uniform Traffic Control, nor is it currently budgeted. Additionally, this area is considered industrial or commercial, therefore does not currently meet the necessity for including additional sidewalk. Should the committee wish to move forward with a potential crossing, this would require design as well as budget implementation in a future year. So we're looking to have a discussion. If this is something that you want us to look into, we certainly can. It wouldn't happen in the 2023 budget year nor 2024 at this point. But if it's something that we want to look at, we're open to discussion on it.
Susan?
is this the one Adams and Albert Street?
Yep.
With a dance class or something that's there?
Correct.
What about a 15 mile an hour, like by schools, when children are present? 15 miles an hour.
Well,
That kind of a sign.
Number one, it's 20 at the school.
Honey?
Yeah. Keep in mind, Susan, this is an industrial park.
Yeah, it is.
And, you know, the truth of the matter is, as far as I'm concerned, there shouldn't be businesses like that in an industrial park. There's a reason that you don't put sidewalk in industrial parks, although there is in that industrial park. That's the oldest industrial park there is in the city. There's especially the businesses on East Albert Street, because of, you know, 100 years ago or whatever, they let them businesses build right up to the right of way. And it's a bad situation, you know, and especially if you're backing out in front of them, and then there's cars to the left or the right that are parked, you can't see. You know, and now you're kind of, with that dance, you're inviting kids to be down in that area. It's not a safe situation, and I don't know that there's anything we can do down there that's gonna make it safer than what it is today.
Putting a crosswalk in there is, I mean,
It's
it's
not
not
a-
gonna slow anybody down.
It's not a controlled crosswalk. Well, the truth of the matter is, as far as the traffic speed in that area, you know, number one, it's, the whole area is between New Pinery and East Albert Street, or and Hartle Street, you might say, or East Albert.
No.
You don't really have a long way to go to speed up.
No.
You know,
It's hard
and
to-
most of, though,
That's true.
I can tell you that there's a given amount of traffic that comes to avoid the lights. That does happen. But I would say the majority of the traffic on that street are businesses that are on that street. So you don't have a big speed problem, you know, on that street.
I don't see a lot of
But there are, especially in the morning and afternoon, there's a given amount of traffic to avoid the stoplights. It's less now since they shut down Rouge, you know, because the morning traffic isn't as bad. But, you know, the whole north side traffic is really different since they put the hospital up, you know, because you took it all the way from the south side, or, you know, from that side of town, you know, whatnot. But, boy, I tell you what, I'm against putting crosswalks down in that area and whatnot, because you're just, to me, you're inviting trouble.
That's where the stoplight is.
Huh?
That's where the stoplight is on East Albert.
No,
No, it's on the.
but it's on Hartle and New Pine
Oh,
Way
is
is
it
where
up on the next
stoplight.
one? I thought it was on that one. Oh, yeah, I guess it is.
No,
I'm looking at
actually
the-
it would be,
Yeah, I'm looking at the wrong road.
Okay, then just
well,
do
East
nothing,
Hartle, the other side of the
basically.
street would be Hartle.
Is that
and
what you're
Hartle- Well,
Just
no,
do
I think
nothing?
both sides of the street there is Hartle Street.
Maybe the business
I
needs
think
to,
that rolling
That's
rink is
staff's
Hartle Street.
recommendation.
the
Oh, yeah.
business
Yeah, you're
needs to
right.
take
Yeah,
responsibility
the
for
rolling
the
rink, I
children a
think that's
little
Hartle
bit.
Street, I think it becomes east, I think everything up until the bend is Hartle Street, and then that's when it turns into East Albert.
Yeah, turns right here
Yeah.
where Albert comes up and then.
Where East Albert comes out and there's a stop sign there,
Yep.
that,
Yeah.
and then you turn right, you stay in East Albert, but if you turn left, you're gonna be on East Hartle.
Correct.
Yeah, that intersection always.
My lakefront property's on East Hartle.
Yeah, exactly. Beautiful Bud Lake.
So anyway, my suggestion is that we leave it go, that we leave it as is.
I'm gonna go with staff on this and say we don't need to do one there.
Susan?
I agree.
Okay,
Leave it
moving
alone.
on. Future agenda items, traffic control devices on East Albert.
We got
so-
a staff report in there too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, first,
And
West Conant Street
quick.
reconstruction update.
Yep,
Yeah,
so,
quick.
we have, continued with the West Conant Street reconstruction project. As of yesterday, all concrete has been poured. So all driveway approaches will be opened up to the residents beginning on Monday. They are then going to be fine grading the roadway for asphalt placement, hopefully next week. They've already begun grading out the parkways and disturbed lawns, and have placed some hydro seed to lay dormant until the spring of next year. So we are hopeful to wrap this project up in the next couple weeks.
Okay,
Nice.
questions, anybody? Okay, next, traffic control devices on East Albert.
Yes, so that is what we talked about at great length at the last meeting. We haven't had a whole lot of time to start looking into some of those devices. I will say that I met with Traffic Analysis and Design Incorporated earlier today, where this topic of this roadway came up, and that's something that they are going to look at also in conjunction with city staff on potential remedies for the increased speeds on that road.
Okay, speed zone West Wisconsin Street.
Yep, just need to work with the chief on that. I will say that we typically do not place our speed boards out between starting in late October and November because the snow can start flying. So it might be something that's gonna stay on future agenda items for quite some time until next spring.
Speaking of future agenda items about that, when something comes up like East Albert Street, another item that I think about is Oneida Street, that intersection down there. I'm not saying that every month we gotta have an update, but every month I'd like to see it on the agenda.
Sure.
And maybe the answer is gonna be, I just haven't had time to deal with it, you know, so, and I'm okay, but we don't wanna lose track of it, and what I can tell you is, the squeak wheel will get the grease. You're only gonna put that on the agenda for so long before you're gonna say, I need to get this off.
That was,
So-
if I may, that was the main reason for our phone call today.
Yeah.
Taddy, was to go over that intersection. There is potential that it might be tied into a future grant application for modification to that
Okay.
intersection. And they will be putting together a proposal
It
for
just,
this.
you know, most items that we put on the agenda is because somebody had a concern. You know, and in respect to that, until we come up with a resolution, and maybe the resolution's gonna be, there's just nothing we can do. I mean, it is what it is, you know, our hands are tied, there's nothing we can do. I'm okay with that, but we need to put a closure to all of them items. Again, I don't know what to do with Oneida Street, but I know that something's gotta be done on Oneida Street. That, you know, it's kinda like the corner out there in East Albert Street. I have no idea what to do. I know that I can understand there's a concern out there. There's a definite concern. And again, the right answer might be, there's just nothing we can do. You know, it is what it is. But we need to keep them items on the agenda so we keep on the forefront now. I'm hoping that we don't end up with a list this long. So,
I was gonna say refresh me on an item, but I remembered what it was.
Oneida, yeah, you know.
I remember what it was.
I actually looked at that the other day again.
We haven't talked about it in a while, so I forgot about it.
Yeah, you know, I'm not certain that coming off of Oneida onto, is it McFarland, is that the street? That letting them only turn right isn't somewhat of a solution. Not letting them have to come all the way across to turn left. I'm not for closing that intersection down.
No.
We
Well, the
got
fire
business,
department recommended against
Yeah.
it, so.
No, I think that was.
and we got businesses there, but only turning right. I think, you know, because what happens with that is, just happened to me, is why I'm bringing this up, is they stick their nose out quite a ways, so they can see what's coming. Well, if you're in that lane going south, you gotta actually get over in the other lane to avoid hitting the front end of their
Well,
car.
you gotta peek out so far,
Yeah.
and the people aren't driving 25.
Yeah,
come
that's
on.
right.
No.
So if you could only turn right, they wouldn't have to come that far out into the intersection to see what traffic, because what they're concerned about, what's coming on the other
Well,
way.
it's just a matter of time before something really bad happens.
That's exactly right.
We've had
So
pretty
we
bad
just need
accidents there,
to,
I think.
Well, it's just a matter of time before.
Keep that on the front burner.
Somebody gets killed. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
It's a very dangerous
It
intersection.
is.
so with that said, adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
I got a motion and a second to adjourn, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed.
My battery died on my
Thank you.
computer. I'm done.
Well, you wanna stick around for a while longer?
Yeah.
Alright. hang out for a couple more hours?
Yeah,